Tyrone told me everything he's doing.
Girl, you know, they can't sent going all
Oh,
the way.
yeah.
Microphone's going live.
Okay.
Very excited. Like pre-stream, it's like the pre-game. Here we come live. Just before kickoff here.
Brian's not here, so give it to Kathy.
Courthouse
Put it in
Annex.
front of Ryan. He'll be here.
Okay.
There you go, Reed. I just seen it.
Okay. Did you text it to me or email it to me?
I just texted you.
Okay. I'll take a look at it tonight. Okay.
Anything else? Look at this. Look at this. One page, front of one page.
We're waiting to see if
My
everybody's.
wife appreciates that. Let me tell you. Yeah, I see the big page. Well,
But he's not here.
okay.
Okay.
James, you said you. James, did you text it? Because I haven't got anything yet. Or did you email it?
I sent it with Signal. Have you?
And I'm on the county's Wi-Fi, so I should have it.
You know, it looks
It
like
may
you
come.
have-
It may come later.
It looks like you haven't been getting any of my signals. Let me try again. You might we might go back and.
I'll wait for it to come. Probably will.
One of my bosses up in DC, I was 3.5 years, my tenants, before I retired, one of my bosses is in Anchorage, and every once in a while, work would take me out there, and I would get to spend a few days, and I loved it for a very short period of time, almost always in April to August. And then outside of that, he'll call me every so often and say, we had a great today, it was 42. That's exactly right. It's dark and cold a lot of the time.
Okay, I got it.
Did it come? I was writing you an email. Yeah, they were doing this like multi-part series with like Brian Williams like going through like what does it mean? What do they believe? You know, Mitt Romney was almost like a JFK moment for us. Like, you know how like they like nobody would have voted for a Catholic or JFK.
Okay.
And everyone was like he's going to do what the Pope says and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so once he won, it was like Catholics aren't. They're just other Christians, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so it was kind of there was a lot of parallels to that with Mitt Romney. Like everyone's like, who are these guys? And they're like, oh, but he's fine. Like
Yeah.
he's just another Christian. You know what I mean? So whoever that was, Channel 5 or whatever, like they're like I think it was ABC News, like was doing a big like multi-week like kind of expose on what they
Right.
believe and this kind of stuff. And this is just one of the night's features. It's very cool.
I will take a look at it tonight. Since y'all gonna get me out of here early.
Yeah, he's here.
All right, we're ready, aren't we? Oh, not yet? We got 2 minutes.
He was, his
give us the update. Your feedback forms and whatnot.
Back in tender age of 14. So I'm hoping she'll come back when she regains her. Some craziness.
My iPad says 6 o'clock.
Is that a new iPad? You got like those full screen?
No, it's actually old. Maybe that's why it's a minute behind.
Minute ahead.
Actually, a minute ahead, you're right.
It's in the future. Oh yeah, ringers and stuff. Let's turn these off.
6 o'clock.
Good evening, welcome to the Spalding County Board of Commissioners Extraordinary Session. It is Monday, February 21st, 2022, at 6 p.m. I would request that you please silence all your cell phones and any other electronic devices. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner James Dutton to introduce the person who's going to give us our invocation, and then Commissioner Rita Johnson to lead us in the pledge to the flag. Commissioner Dutton.
It's my absolute pleasure tonight to introduce a friend of mine, the Bishop of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here in Spalding County. He's my bishop, and I want to thank him for being here, and I want to thank him for doing a great job taking the slot that was very close to my heart. My father had the slot before he died. He was the bishop there, and Bishop Seiler has just done a fantastic job in that role, and it's my pleasure to introduce y'all to him and ask him to do the invocation tonight.
Our Father, which art in heaven, we are so grateful for the opportunity that we have to live in this country. We're so thankful for the freedoms that we enjoy daily that are so easy to take for granted. Father, we're thankful for the public servants that are before us and the staff that support them. We ask a blessing upon them, that they will be able to bless our community with those things that will help families and individuals to have a better quality of life. And we are grateful for, especially for our Savior, Jesus Christ. We are thankful for the opportunity that we have to worship as we please in this country, and for the blessing it is to be one nation under God. We're so thankful for this and recognize that this is a peculiar thing in this world that we live in. We ask that would please bless all those who are supporting our leaders in this community as well, that they and their families will be blessed for their sacrifice of time, and that we will all be able to do a good job to help our community to be a better place. We're so thankful again for our Savior, for the things that He has taught that help us to gain happiness and peace in this life. And we leave these things with Thee in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. Ms. Johnson. At this time, is there any amendments to the agenda?
Oh, yes, sorry, taking notes over here. I'd like to propose I motion to amend the agenda to create a new number 1 under new business for the purposes of a member of the Elections Board is here to address us for tonight. We just need to hear what they've asked for.
Okay, I have a motion. I will second that motion. Is there any discussion?
Yes, not really sure why we're having a presentation that we didn't
Is it
know about
presentation?
for tonight.
I think they probably should have asked earlier, but I think there was a discussion at the Elections Board meeting that they needed some clarification from us on, I think. So I think they.
So they're
they
asking
sent-
us for something.
Yeah, so they've sent.
They're asking us for something.
and we just need to hear.
I'll listen to it. I'll
whatever
listen
that
So
is, yeah, yeah.
this is a discussion item or this
Right.
is an action item?
No, it should just be a discussion tonight.
And you're putting that at the first item of business, why wouldn't it just go in presentation,
Is it?
if that's what it is?
I mean, I think it's
Because it's not
less of a
business.
presentation, I think it's like a discussion. I think he wants our feedback as well, or they, yeah. You know what I'm saying, like,
Okay, that's fine, I'm just saying the public, the general public is not aware of this, and if it's not an emergency, then, I mean, it's not an emergency, right? Am I missing something?
Okay, attorney over here, since, we just had our retreat today, what can we do here?
You can agree to amend your agenda and add it as a presentation. You could add it as new business. It could be an action item or not. So it's,
So I think the question Commissioner Flyer Taylor wants to know is, are we making a decision on something right now for the Board of Elections? Are we just listening? We're just listening?
That's what I'm saying, because
Okay.
if we have to make a decision on it and we have no previous knowledge of what it is, if there were questions we needed to have investigated, we've not had the opportunity to do that.
No, I totally
And if it's a real business item, then the rest of the public
no, I
should
agree.
also be able to.
Okay, I can listen, that's fine.
I agree. I don't think we're ready to take any action tonight. But I don't
Amend
know.
your motion to make this item for presentation.
Sure, we can put it in presentations.
Okay,
It's gonna be
I'm
same
good
time.
with that too.
I
You
second
seconded,
that.
right?
Yeah, I can second that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let me,
Will you call for the question, Mr. Chairman?
where do you go?
Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. 4-0, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Is there any other amendments to the agenda?
No, I'll do that as we go into discussion about,
Okay, okay.
Oh, yeah, motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Okay, I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Do I have a second?
I'll
Second.
She'll
Okay, I
second.
have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 4-0, motion carries. Thank you. Agenda is now set. Presentation and proclamation. Miller Edwards of Malden and Jenkins LLC to present the FY 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. It's good to have you back here again, sir.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Again, thank you again for having me here tonight. I think we have a good audit here, a lot of good news to talk about. Looking at the big picture of things, when you look at Spalding County, and when you look at all of your different activities, when I include your Board of Health, your Water Authority, Development Authority, everything, and I add it all up, y'all have about 200 million in assets. It's a pretty good size operation, but of that 200 million, about 64 million of that is cash and investments. So it's not all 200 million is cash investments. There's a lot of hard assets, infrastructure, those kind of things. But when you look at the primary government itself, which is the primary thing that I'm here to talk to you about today, you've got about 45 million in cash and investments. You've got a total assets about 146 million. And you've got liabilities of 56 million. So when you take that into account, that gives you an equity position of about 90. That's a good place to be. And it's a liquid 90. That's what I like about it. When I say liquid, meaning that there's a lot of cash and investments, those kind of things behind that equity. So many times they go to places that will have a good equity, but they still need you to go buy them lunch because they don't have the money in their pocket. In the case of looking here, you've got, again, about $45 million worth of that 90 million that's cash and investments. That's a good place to be. When you look again at the primary government, we're talking about your general fund and all the SPLOST funds and everything that's underneath this immediate umbrella. You all took in about $71 million, and guess how much you spent? About $71
I
million.
was about to say, every
So,
bit of it.
pretty close to break even right there, that's a pretty good thing too. In the middle of all this, I want to make sure you know that you took in about $3.7 million worth of federal grant money this year. Large part of that, of course, was the CARES money of about $2.2 million. Because of the size of the grant funds that came in, and because of how large the CARES money was, we had to do a special audit of the CARES and make sure that you dotted all i's, crossed all t's, did what you were supposed to do with the money, and I'm happy to say, everything was good.
Very good.
So when you look at our single audit report, which we don't always do a single audit here, that's because you don't always have the federal funds that require it. But you did this year, and when we are able to tell you that we have a clean report there, that's a good thing. One other thing I'll mention at this point, and I'll touch on it later if we need to, over the years when we've met, I've always had some kind of findings or management points that having to do with things that might be here, it might be the elected officials. Guess how many such recommendations I have this year?
Let's hope for
Zero.
zero.
Okay.
That's a first. I don't think I've ever been able to tell you that we have nothing that we saw as a breakdown in controls that needed to be discussed with you in an evening setting like tonight. So that's a good thing. And what that says to me is not only did the Board of Commissioners office do a fine job, as you typically do, but also your elected officials. We're talking sheriff, tax commissioner, courts. They all took the advice provided in the past and worked on the issues, and we've got a good thing going right here. You know, we audit about 65 counties. Very seldom do I go to a county government that has all these different functions and all these different constitutional offices and be able to say, it was clean. We have no recommendations for improvement relative to those internal controls. So that's a great thing as well. Included in all this, you did have some ARPA money. I know sometimes people get kind of confused about what we've got. We've got CARES money that we spent, and we've got this ARPA money that's come in. You haven't spent very much, if anything, on the ARPA money. You've got about $6.5 million going into the year we're now in. At July 1 of 2021, you had about $6.5 million. That's not in any of the fund balances, because the way this works is you don't recognize that as part of fund balance until you've earned the right to do so. The way you earn it is to spend it the way it was asked to be spent. And so that'll happen during the year. You'll start recognizing that $6.5 million as you're spending it, and it'll be offset revenues and expenses, and it'll be a good thing. But you've got those in reserves waiting to be used that have not otherwise been. So that's, you're sitting in a good spot right now. Another thing I'd like to mention when it comes to the general fund is you had a very good budget year. And what I mean by that is you had favorable, a little bit more revenues than you had budgeted, about $500,000 worth of revenues that you had not budgeted. So it wasn't a big difference. But you really pulled it in at the belt strap. What you had for expenditures that you had, budgeted for, you spent about $5.8 million less than that, okay? That's a great thing.
No doubt.
So, again, a real good year when you look at budget to actual. That says to me that there's something good going on here where you can do these things and show the improvements that you're showing and come out with a very good budget to actual, work product. That's a great thing. One thing I want to mention, this came up a few weeks ago when Jenna was talking to me, and I just want to make sure everybody knows, when we audit Spalding County, you have separate auditors for the Board of Health and for the Development Authority, and they give us their report, and we incorporate it into ours. We have to take ultimate responsibility. But you've got one other component unit out there, it's called the Water Authority. It is included in our audit effort, okay? So if anybody ever wonders, has that been audited? Yes, it's audited every year. We audit the receivables, the cash accounts, the operations, all those kind of things. They're part of this giant umbrella of Spalding County. And let me just say on that, they had a very good year. They took in about, $9.5 million in revenues and spent about 7.7, had about a 1.7 bottom line. But what I really like when you look at the Water Authority is the cash flows. It generated positive cash flows of about 2.4 million, meaning they shouldn't have to come running over here and asking questions every day, can I get some money? Because they're generating their own cash flows. Why do they need to? They've got some debt that they've got to be able to pay back, and they've got infrastructure and other things they're trying to acquire. I think this past year they spent about $1 million, $950,000 on infrastructure, on assets. So they've got to generate good positive cash flows. There's a lot of places I go where these proprietary activities do not do that. They're doing that. And so again, a good year there at the Water Authority as well. One last thing I could share with you that I think I talked to you about it last year, because we saw a decline in this area. It was your pension plan. Your pension plan, when you look at the way it's funded right now, you all historically were up around 84, 82, 80%. A year ago, we're talking June 30 of 20. I'm still getting used to these dates. June 30 of 20, you came down to about 63%. It's crept up a little bit. It's gotten up to about 69%. So it's going in the right direction. But I just want to let you know, we still have a little ways to go. So just keep monitoring the pension plan. Talk to management about it. Make sure to ask some questions in the interim about how's our pension plan doing. They get reports constantly on that, I'm sure, that we'll be able to demonstrate how we're doing. It's a combination of things when you look at a pension plan. It's how you're investing your money and what kind of returns you're getting, as well as what kind of actuarial assumptions are going on. You've got the revenues over here that are being generated with these assets, these investments, but then you got this mystery number out here that the actuaries work on. You got to tie the two together, and if this asset is greater than this, you're in a good place. That's not the case. Most governments that we serve, usually the asset's a little bit lower than the liability. Usually it's about an 85% funded situation, and y'all are at 69. So I don't want to make you think the sky is falling, but it's just something to keep our eyes on and make sure that we start going back in the right direction as you did this past year. I mean, you had a 6-point improvement there. Let's just do that again, and let's see where we can go with it. But that kind of summarizes everything that I want to share with you tonight as to what the audit process was about. Again, a lot of good things. Clean audit report on the financials, clean audit report on your internal controls, clean audit report on your single audit use of the federal funds. I mean, a lot of good things. No management recommendations or any kind of other breakdowns that we needed to cite to you tonight. You know, there's always little things we talk about during the course of the audit, but nothing that I need to elevate to you tonight. So again, I think this is about as clean a report as you've ever heard from me.
Man, way to
And
go.
I'm sorry to give that kind of news to you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Miller, so in my brain, I'm thinking, how did we do so much better when we really didn't operate like we normally operated in 19, okay? This was COVID the last 18 months.
Right.
So we've basically gone through 2 cycles.
Yep.
And I guess in my brain, I'm thinking, how did we spend the revenue that we planned to budget for? Because so much stuff we didn't do, but then there were the CARE Act funds that we spent for other stuff.
Right.
So, for me, I feel a little misled that we did so good, because I know that those last 2 years are anomalies.
Well,
I mean, I'm not mad because we're in a
No,
good position,
no.
but I'm just saying.
well, I think, again, when you look at your functional areas, when I look at it, I mean, your big one was public safety, really saved you a lot on the budget to actual this year. You spent 26.5 and you had it budgeted for 29.5. So.
Hey, Sheriff.
Yeah,
Yes,
Sheriff.
he's here.
That's right.
Yeah, see,
So,
yeah.
again, you know, you'll have to ask him what he did to save all that money. But again, it was all across the board, I will say. A lot of good things there. The biggest thing, when I look at that budget actually, was the jail cost, the operations of the jail. That was a variation from budget of about $1 million right there. So, you know, again, but you had that same theme in every one of the areas. Every functional area of the government did better, maybe not as good as the sheriff's office did in this respect, you know. But everybody did a little bit better here and there, and again, the revenues came in a little bit above. The CARES money did help. You know, the ARPA money's going to help when you start spending that. At the end of the day, what I found over the last couple of years is all the soothsayers that are out there saying the sky is falling, that the economy's about to crash, it didn't. What we had was, in the spring of '20, we had some paranoia, we had some worry. Everybody started shutting down and going home. But the funny thing is when the sales tax revenue went down during that short period of time, it came back resoundingly strong as we went into the summer of '20. Now, think about that. The summer of '20 and the fall of '20 is in this document right here. And those sales tax monies and all those different revenues that we thought that was going away for a long time, didn't. They came back with a vengeance. So a lot of good things happened there. And I've seen that theme, not just here, but that's been most everywhere I go, where we've seen those kind of things happen. But again, a lot of good things happening here for sure. Is it gonna always be like that? We'll see, right? But
hope so.
I can tell you it's not always been that way, so I'm not gonna expect it to always be that way. But it's a good place to be right now for sure.
So one more question. So was it, can't remember if it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where we had to start counting the retirement money that we were supposed to be paying in as a liability?
Well, yeah, I know what you're going. When we started putting that on the books, it's called a net pension liability. We had to do that probably about 5 years ago, started putting that on there. And that did change the entity-wide perspective. When we look at everything, when I talked about those assets of $200 million and those liabilities, that became a liability at that point. It's not at the fund level. It's not the general fund, the SPLOST funds, any of that, but at the entity-wide, it's one of these things we have to make a modification for. And you do have a liability on your books.
So, yeah, I was thinking that when we talked about this last year, we had been saying how, we wanted maybe 12 weeks of operating.
Okay, you're talking the fund
Fund
balance
balance.
side.
Right, in the fund balance.
Yeah.
But when we started talking about, oh, darn, I had an old person moment.
I get them all the time.
Yeah, I'll think of it in a minute. I completely lost it. I was looking in your face and it just went flying across the room.
I'll ask a question so you can think about it. You did just talk about the 69% funded pension liability.
Yes, sir.
Is this a line item that we need to fund more to grow? Like, what do we do to get that back up to
You
the
know,
80,
that's
85,
a good question, and unfortunately, I don't have the magic answer. I think it's a combination of things. Different boards like yours have done a lot of things to look at their benefits that they're providing. And they start deciding if they need to do anything different with their benefits. Do we need to fund it any differently? Do we need any participation? Do we need to talk to our investment parties and really put the screws to them about how we want to see these funds invested? There's a lot of different angles on that. I think a good thing is to have a lot of dialogue with your actuarial group that does this for you. They're a big part of what kind of assumptions are being made. When I say that, we're talking about things called discount rates.
Sure.
When you've got a discount rate that changes from 7 to 8, it can change your number drastically. 1%
Right.
can cause it to go one way or the other just drastically. And these are all assumptions being made. The trick is to be looking out there. If I'm in your shoes, and I'm not, if I'm in your shoes, I'm looking at this and say, hey, management, can you give me a 5-year and a 10-year plan?
Right.
Let's don't overreact right now, but let's make sure we don't sit here in the year 2027 and find out that now we're 50% funded because of something we didn't think about. This is one of those things that takes a long time to move, okay, typically. And it's just one of those things we ought to have in the back of our mind, you know, that we want to make this thing better. We'd like to get up to like that 85%. Well, that's only a
Right.
15-point to do. You did 6 of that this year. So, you know, in 2.5 years, we might be right where we need to be. But we got to keep our focus on that. And I'd say to management, what do we need to do to make that happen? You're still able to fund it right now. And I don't want anyone in this audience or anyone that reads the newspaper tomorrow to think that I'm saying the pension plan is, you know, a problem state. No, the pension plan is fine.
Sure.
What's the problem is if all of a sudden we aren't funding enough of it today to cover tomorrow.
Right.
That just means your future taxpayers are going to be looking to possibly have to fund it more then. It's the same kind of thing we've heard our whole life about Social Security.
Sure.
And, you know, we've heard, you know, it's not going to be there when you retire. Well, I hope it's still there when I retire. It's only a few more years away. But, you know, that's what we hear. And it hadn't happened with Social Security, has it? It's just one of those things we've got to keep in the back of our mind and say, you know, what do we need to do today for the next 5 years? Where are we going to be in 2027? Things like that.
Well, I get the years of compounding interest and the way that the discount rates work, but I mean, are we funding that from our budget? Is this because the employees pay in? Like, how do we get, how does that number go up?
That's where you need to talk.
And not just because of the math and whatever.
Looks like maybe you've got something you want to add in.
Jenny, you want to share?
Yeah, and before you do, my question was what he was asking.
Okay.
If 5 years ago, before we had to really start accounting for what we should have in the budget, we knew that the amount for our percentages were gonna go down because we had to match up more of how much we should pay. We talked about it last year, same thing. Should we be doing something different? And my other concern is that we have a graying population here. We have a lot of people who are gonna be retiring. And what that means is that we are really going to be paying out money.
Right.
So we don't have a plan for how we can offset that and still try to grow.
Every year when we get our actuarial report from ACCG, they also present us with a bill for our contribution. And there are 2 different amounts on there that we could pay. We could pay what they call the required amount, and that's the statutory amount that we are required to contribute. Or we could contribute what they call the recommended amount. We have always contributed the recommended amount. There could be $1 million difference between that. And that's what made the 6% up this year. And as long as we keep contributing the recommended amount, we're going to get back to where we were. It's because we changed our plan to the 2% multiplier from the 1% multiplier. But, I mean, management has a plan to get back up there.
Okay.
We're just gonna continue to pay the recommended amount rather than the statutory amount.
So it went from that 85 to like the 63.
Because we changed the
math.
plan.
That is correct.
And so we're paying in
More.
the extra, the recommended amount, which slowly bumps us back up.
That is correct, and
Does that
Jenna
change
and I have
the-
been part of multiple conversations with with ACCG in order to make sure that we're headed in that direction, because we share the same concerns that you do with those who are eligible for retirement.
Let me touch on something Jenna just said that's important. When I look at the last several years, going back to 2015, that's in your report, the liability, not the net liability, but the liability that existed back in 2015 was 28 million to the future, the valuation of everything that we owe to all people that was vested at that time was 28 million. Then it went to 29, 31, 31, 31, and then she talked about the change in the plan, and the actuarial liability jumped up to 50, from 31 to 50. And then it moved up to 55 this year. In the meantime, your assets they're investing, they're doing, but when you change your plan, we gotta keep the focus. We wanna get it back to where it was. And like she said, if you'll pay the recommended and not just the minimal required, we'll get there. It's just something to keep in the front of your mind.
Okay, that answered all my questions. That's perfect.
We all agree, right? We'll make sure all the board agrees. We're gonna continue. Okay, all right.
Vote to approve of this?
This is just a presentation.
I like the presentation. I think we had hoped to come back and back and back and back, saying the same thing over and over and over. We
That's
like
right.
that answer you got this
Okay.
time.
All right.
All right,
Mr. Chairman, we also have a packet in here that is a proposal for audit services.
Is that,
Is that y'all?
okay, I think, yes.
Was this something that you want us to consider tonight? Because I know in the past, we haven't, like at the beginning of your contracted with you.
Yes, ma'am, it's under new business, item
Okay.
number,
All right, we'll
1A
wait till
now.
we get there.
Okay.
All right. That's all I have, Mr.
Well, I
Chairman.
guess it's still one, because we moved the proclamation.
okay.
All right, thank you.
Is this-
thank you, Miller.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Miller. We appreciate it.
Do y'all
Another
need
great
any
job.
longer, or you want me to? You think I ought to stay?
Get to the vote.
Okay, if you don't mind, Jeff, just,
That'll be fine.
all right. Did you move yours to proclamation?
Yeah,
or-
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, well, let's do financial statements first.
No, you need to do number two, is under proclamations, the one that.
The new item.
That you added.
Okay.
Under new
what-
business.
So, was that
We have.
that number one, the consideration of
Yeah.
financial statements for the 7 months ended?
No, no.
That was a
Okay, so,
That was-
presentation.
Oh,
Board of Elections.
under
All right,
4, Roman
this
number
is
4.
item number 2.
Oh.
That was amended to be the election board request.
Commissioners, I appreciate the time this evening. I'll keep it brief. I'm Roy McLean. I'm the Secretary of the Board of Elections and Registration. I'm directed to be here tonight by the board to request in the future some funding to pay for a person to develop an autograph, a timeline that would be put into a elevator speech and maybe like a push card to answer many of the questions that we've had since several of the elections have had interesting results, to say the least. Many folks come to us and say they've heard this, they've heard that, and we need factual information to put that out. We came to the county and asked if the folks at the county would be able to help us, and that's just not what they do. We were told that we needed to elicit a firm to do that. And so we're looking, this is a single request for a specific elevator speech type push card project, I guess is what we would call it, that would lay out the timeline and answer factual questions, factual information about some of the things that are commonly requested. Now, I would answer a question or two if you have any, but we think that this will probably come in somewhere in the $10,000 range. I'm not ready to make a request for that tonight, but a request of not to exceed $10,000 would probably cover that. Other agencies, other boards of elections have had to do this because there's just so much misinformation and, quite frankly, some lies that are floating around out there that need to be addressed. We have no official organ that we can answer those kinds of things to get the truth out. So, are there any questions at this point?
I think you already answered mine. There isn't somebody with the county, maybe,
Yeah, we specifically came to the county and asked that.
so this isn't a service the county already could provide, like legal service or anything like that, right? Like,
I do not see this as a service that we could provide, no, sir.
And Roy, you're asking for, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I did speak with Amy Story about this as well, and she recommended a few other elections is a specific area of expertise.
Okay, and what you're asking for is to put an RFP out,
Correct,
to be able to see what price it would be and what the services would be.
correct.
That's all you're asking for at this point?
Absolutely. At which point, we would have some knowledge to come back to you. We think it would be not to exceed $10,000.
Okay,
So, presentation.
Ma'am, I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
So, just in talking about your presentation, I know we're not answering
Quinn,
anything.
so you can hear.
Mike?
I can, okay, sorry. I said I realize this is just for presentation, but my question is that something that you requested in your annual budget?
Because this didn't come up as part of the budgeting process, we could certainly do it in the future, but this is something that needs to be done now that would be out of budget.
So, did you have someone to perform a needs assessment for this? I guess it's PR.
The only thing that we were able to do was go to the county and ask if those services were available. We were told they were not, and that it was be in our best interest to go to an outside organization that does this kind of work. It's very specialized, as the attorney said. So that's the needs assessment that we've been able to do.
So, are they funded completely by Spalding County? No state funds?
No,
So I would think that they're, with all these other things that are being funded by the state, that with elections being such a hot button and everybody trying to change the election rules, that there should be an opportunity for some funds, for a grant fund.
As to
But,
my knowledge, there is no money from the state, and we've looked around, and this is what we've been able to come up with.
What is your timeline?
Like to do it sooner than later, like probably by your next meeting. Once
So-
we get the RFPs back, then we'd be able to come to you and make a specific request.
so are there other counties you're saying that are actually doing this? Did
Yes.
I hear you say that? Which county specifically?
I can't tell you that, I don't know.
Okay, so we'll need to have some of that information, but I would also like to know specifically how you've looked at budgeting this. Of course, we'll need to know what your budget is for it. But also that you have some idea how you're gonna do it. I mean, I know you're saying push letters, but that means you have to hire a firm to do that.
We're looking at a single, probably something like a 30-second elevator speech, a push card type document, and develop a timeline to answer specific factual information, factual questions that have been asked of us.
Could you answer one more, when you come back, or whenever y'all make an actual request for this? I would like to know the counties that you know that have done this, and also in general, maybe like just in this area, 10, 12 counties, what part of their budget, their elections budget, do they, 10% for this kind of, PR, whatever it is, public information? So that would give us a better idea of what your advertising, your public relations budget should look in comparison to your entire.
We'll take the minutes from tonight and develop that into a reply to your questions.
All right, thank you. That's
And
all I
also,
have,
what
Mr. Chairman.
does that elevator speech look like as well? I'm curious to know. You said you're getting a lot of questions or whatever from people. You're trying to get out the right information. So I'm trying, I would like to know what, I don't know if you have anything designed yet. Do you even know what that
We
looks like?
do not, because we don't know what we need to provide. And there are companies that do this, so they would probably present in their RFP a sample of what they would be able to provide. I'd expect that we'd have that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like the county manager, help us to understand
Yeah.
what they're saying, because I hear the need, but I feel like the right steps haven't been taken to get to the place where you can say, this is something that we want to develop and this is how much money it's gonna cost.
Yes, ma'am, I'll be more than happy to do that for our next meeting.
All right.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for Roy? Thank you, Roy, for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
time, I
Mr.
appreciate it.
McLean.
Thank you. Number 5, presentation of financial statement. Consider approval of the financial statement for the seven months ending January 31st, 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the financial statements for the 7 months ending January 31st, 2022.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Oh,
I have a motion and a second.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you, Ms.
Yeah,
Garrison.
thanks, Jenna.
Item number 6, citizens' comments. Speakers must sign up prior to the meeting and provide their names, addresses, and the topics they wish to address. Speakers must direct their remarks to the board and not to individual commissioners or to the audience. Personal disagreements with individual commissioners or county employees are not a matter of public concern, and personal attacks will not be tolerated. The chairman has the right to limit your comments in the interest of disposing of the county's business in an efficient and respectful manner. Speakers will be allocated 3 minutes to speak on their chosen topics as they relate to matters pertaining to the jurisdiction of the Board of Commissioners. No questions will be asked by any of the commissioners during the citizen comments. Outbursts from the audience will not be tolerated. Common courtesy and civility are expected at all times during the meeting. No speakers will be permitted to speak more than 3 minutes or more than once, unless the board votes to suspend this rule. Dr. Ledbetter.
We have Steve Coate and Rachel Hatcher. Are you both looking to speak at item number 7? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Cameron Furr and Hannah Mead would like to speak about a sound warrant. Okay.
Come forward.
I'm sorry, this was for under new business.
It's amplification.
The amplification.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was for the amplification. All right. Cindy Sanders on animal control.
Good evening, Cindy. Come forward, please, and state your name and address for the record, and welcome back.
Good evening, all. My name's Cindy Sanders. I live at 206 Park Street, Griffin, Georgia. That would be the Highland Mill Village. My concern is with animal control and controlling when we make complaints to them or ask about them to come out and see about the roaming dogs. I'm just going to give you an outline of my last experience with them to give you the reason for my concern. On October the 10th of 2021, I made an email contact with the supervisor about 2 dogs that had been roaming our community for about 3 weeks, therefore they were abandoned. Animal Control responded on October the 11th and said that they would be sending someone out. No one came out. The animal was in heat, and it was a dump. I live in a dump area. On October the 22nd, I made contact with Animal Control again about the 2 dogs. The response on October the 22nd was they are sending one out today or Monday. No one ever showed. On January the 19th, one of the animals, which was a female in heat that I had called about, had puppies and was pregnant. It had puppies under a porch of what I thought was an abandoned home, but obviously it just chose that area and someone did live there. They responded on January the 20th and said they would send an officer out. No officer again. And all this is through email contact. It's not from phone calls. On January the 27th, I made a second request for them to go check on the puppies. I was concerned it was going to get 22 degrees that night, and I knew they were under a back porch. On January the 28th, they said they were going to send an officer out. Still didn't send an officer out. On February the 15th, they finally did send an officer out that posted something on the front porch, and of course I haven't heard from them again. But in our ordinances, we have a sterilization requirement. Any person owning, keeping, harboring, or having custody of any dog 6 months or older is required to have said animals surgically sterilized, except for the following ordinances, and most of them are kennels, vets, and such. We would not have, because I went down and I talked to the person who lived at that area when I seen them on the front porch, and offered food, I offered everything that we should offer, help, and the animal had 10 puppies. So now we have 10 unwanted puppies that he claims he's going to sell for $350 each. Also, you cannot sell animals without having a license to sell animals. I still haven't heard a response from Animal Control. They did pick up the phone and call me around February the 11th and inform me that everyone's allowed to 1 litter of puppies, sorry. But that's my concerns. I wish maybe someone could address that.
Thank you, Cindy, we appreciate it.
Have
We-
you talked to her? Thank you.
Would, County Manager, would you look into that, please?
I will.
Okay,
There's no one else who has signed up.
okay, thank you. Item 7, minutes. Consider approval of the minutes of the Spalding County Board of Commissioners regular meeting on February 7th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes as
I have a
presented.
motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0. Thank you. Motion carries. There is no old business. Item number 9, new business. Consider extension of the Spalding County contract with Malden Jenkins LLC as the official county auditors. Dr. Ledbetter.
So as we've just heard from Miller, have the conversation with us about the job that they performed, Malden and Jenkins have performed for our audit. The staff is making a recommendation to extend their contract for 2022 in the amount of $66,000 for this year. This is budgeted, and it is our recommendation that we move forward with that approval.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll make a motion, a second, for the purpose of discussion.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Discussion, please.
I think it's easy to approve this when they keep bringing us good news like that. Can we put it in the contract? They keep bringing us good news? Is that-
Dr. Ledbetter.
Yes, ma'am.
So my concern is, I don't remember us ever appointing an auditor. Since I've been here, they've done it, and done an excellent job. But if we start, everyone that we contract with, if we start appointing them, which our appointments happen at the beginning of the year, then we need to start doing that for but out of an abundance of happiness, I would certainly love it if we were to make a motion to hire them for our fiscal year 23. Because obviously they're in our employ now, and it's 22. I mean, I'm not really sure what the difference is, but just to be consistent with how we pick everybody else is the main thing. So I rescind my second, and if somebody else wants to, but
So you want to make it for 2 years instead of,
for fiscal year
Year.
23.
Okay.
That's for the budget
Okay.
that we're
Correct.
going into in
To-
July.
okay.
So that would be July to July.
Correct.
Because they're already in our employ now.
Correct.
oh, got it, okay.
All right.
So did you rescind your second?
I rescinded my second, but the motion's still on the floor.
James, are you changing yours to 23, FY 23?
Sure.
Okay. All right, I have a motion.
Then okay, I'll second it.
All right, I have a
The amended
motion and and a second. Any more discussion for FY 23?
I just want to say, I have seen a time when he came in here to give us our report that we literally were crying when we left out of here.
Yeah.
So to me, that is completely amazing, that he could give us such a good report. And it speaks to the people that we have leading our department, because that couldn't have happened without them. So,
Absolutely agree.
thank you guys, and thank you.
And since I've
Yeah.
been here, this is the first year you've never mentioned we had any outstanding checks that hadn't been cashed either, so I was waiting for that one.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that one. We didn't have it, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yes, all right.
Call for the question?
All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. God bless and be safe. Consider request from Margaret Saunders to have amplification on Sunday, March 20, 2022, from 2 p.m. until 7 p.m. for the wedding to be held at Meadowlark Event Center located at 2613 Noonan Road, Griffin, Georgia. Dr. Ledbetter.
Just as background, the Sheriff's Department and Community Development have no problems with this request. Community Development advised that this location is zoned for an event center, that they do have a current business license. Although the applicant is asking for the permit until 11:50 PM.
No, that was,
That's 7, 2 to 7.
Oh, please forgive me.
Good, you're good.
This is a 2
Yeah,
to
yes, that is
7.
correct, 2 to 7. The recommendation of staff is that we move forward with this approval.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve Ms. Saunders' application request for March 20th, 2022, from 2 to 7 PM at Meadowlark Event Center.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3. Consider request from Hannah Mead to have amplification on Saturday, March 5th, 2022, from 2 to 9 for a wedding to be held at Meadowlark Event Center located at 2613 Noonan Road, Griffin, Georgia.
Mr. Chairman, the Sheriff's Department and Community Development have no problems with this request. Community Development advised that this location is zoned for an event center, and they do have a current business license. Recommendation of staff is that we approve the application.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Now, my agenda says from 4 to 9.
Okay, I'm sorry. Did I
I'll make sure we
misread
get that right, because that's
Okay.
okay.
Whatever the agenda is.
Yes.
It's still good.
Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favor, okay, excuse me.
No, I'm just saying I seconded it.
All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0, motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4, consider request from the Spalding County Fire Department to transfer a 2006 Ford Crown Victoria and a 2004 Ford Explorer to the Leisure Service Department.
Chief Pope? Sir, please forgive me. Chief Byrd? Thank you. Give me that.
Thank you. These vehicles have been used by the department since they were brand new, have acquired miles and a lot of age, and where they'll be suitable for non-emergency use. If they were still in our inventory, they would be subject to use for emergency responses, and we've asked to move them to a department that could better utilize them.
Motion to approve.
All right, I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
How many more years do you think we have on these vehicles, you think?
Ma'am?
It's kind of hard to tell how many more years left that maybe there'll be before we have to think about getting.
I will tell you that the Crown Victoria, I would give it a couple more years.
5?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't, no, ma'am, possibly about 3.
Okay.
It has seen a better time.
Okay.
The Ford Explorer is actually in very decent shape. I would give it 5 more years.
I'm not
So-
going to ask about mileage, so anyway, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't have those numbers in front of me.
I'm just a little bit concerned because we're giving Park Leisure Services a 16 and an 18-year-old car. And my first question is, when is the last time they had a new vehicle?
That's 2018?
Yes, 2018.
And what was that vehicle for?
That's a vehicle I drive. It's a Ford Escape. And
Okay.
we've been sharing that vehicle with several of the staff in the department.
So I guess in my brain, I'm thinking old car, really old car, oil, blah, 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 blah. Wouldn't it be simpler for us to just put that on the auction thing and buy them a car?
That's one of the things that we are looking at in the budget process. And we are examining the maintenance cost versus purchase cost. That is a big deal for me, and we are looking at that very hot and heavy right now during budget season.
Yeah, I mean, we're always getting new cars for, I'm not talking about you, TJ. But everybody seems to be getting a new car except for Leisure Services, and they're all over the place. From rec center to rec center and meetings and whatever, so yeah, I'm not all warm and fuzzy. I mean, I'll vote for this because it's a body. You know, it's some wheels and it might go and stop or whatever, but come on, we need to do better than that.
We also have immediate need. The supply chain for new vehicles,
Oh, yeah.
so.
It's buys
it
us a
will
year or two.
help- It will help us in the meantime.
Yeah.
And I will also say, before they go over, we'll send them for full maintenance and have them checked out thoroughly to make sure they're in good shape before we turn them over.
I appreciate that.
Well, you can't get a 18-year-old car.
No, you can't.
But anyway, yes, that's just I just wanted to say, that's the concern. Maybe we need to look at trying to find a hybrid or something that's not such a gas hog, but, y'all need to get at least a new car
Thank you.
Okay.
somewhere. A bike.
Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Good staff interaction
Yes.
between the two of you. We appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
It's good teamwork.
Good teamwork, yes. Consider request from Public Works Department for a purchase order for a equipment purchase from John Deere. TJ?
Yeah, here's
Yeah,
TJ.
just as a reminder, we discussed this at our retreat back in early January for the need to move forward with the purchase of the equipment. TJ?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As you're familiar, June 16th, our current 5-year lease on our large equipment will expire, which essentially means they'll come and get those pieces of equipment. Those are our large equipment. Currently, it's a Caterpillar. Things like our motor graders, our mini X's, our skid steers. So those items essentially won't be ours on June the 16th. I'm bringing this to you early because of supply chain. We can't even guarantee that they'll be here in time, but we're going to do everything we can. In reference to cost, actually, we were able to address some other needs there as well. And if you factor in our current lease, and we're also renting a backhoe, if you factor those items in, I'll actually come in $286.86 less per month for the next 5 years than what we're spending now.
I like that. Yeah, we like that. Way to go, TJ.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising, excuse me, wait.
Funds, where's it coming from?
It come from Flint Equipment, which will be John Deere.
No, but I'm saying, which
Money fund.
fund, which money fund?
It's already budgeted. Portion of that comes out of our rental, and then the other one comes out of our road maintenance, but it'll all be combined into rental. So the dollars will be less. We'll just move everything to the
Okay, yeah,
correct
a
account.
regular lease contract.
Yes, regular lease
Okay,
contract.
all right,
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
all.
Okay. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 5-0. Motion carries. Thank you, TJ.
Oh, we're
Consi-
not done with him. He's
Yeah,
not
obviously.
going anywhere.
Consider
better.
a resolution to be presented as part of the application for hazardous waste trust fund.
Want me to go?
TJ, Mary Stacy, and Randy King are here this evening in support of your questions that you may have. But yes, TJ, please make presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Ledbetter, Chairman and Commissioners. Last year in the Georgia State Legislature, the rules for the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund were changed. The actual program is called the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund Reimbursement Application. Essentially what changed is that you can now get reimbursement for the cost of monitoring your closed landfill without being a hazardous waste site. So we now qualify for that reimbursement. What we have before you tonight is the approval of a task order form with S&ME, who currently monitors our landfill for $6,500, and then an approval of the model resolution so that we can move forward with our application to the state. What this will mean is, now this is a reimbursement, it is not a grant. So we will be eligible for up to $2 million. Our first application will be for all of the information that we could find from past payings of monitoring, and then we'll be able to move forward all the way up to the limit of $2 million.
Can we have a question?
Can we get a motion and a second, and then we'll
All
go
right.
to discussion and questions?
Motion to approve.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Now discussion.
I just kind of went through that grant application really fast when we got to look at it before the meeting. But TJ, is this gonna be like a grant that would help you if there were collaborative partners?
No, it's not a grant. Once we fill out the application, we'll be able to move forward with the reimbursement. And what happens is that there's a tipping fee assigned to all trash that goes to landfills throughout Georgia, and then they have established this fund that we can apply for. So this is a reimbursement of monies we've already spent, and then monies we will spend up to the $2 million.
Very good. This is basically a cost savings, I mean, I don't know if you want to call it a cost savings, but we're not spending any money, basically.
Correct. I'm just going to spend the $6,500 in the task order for them to have the application done correctly.
How soon are we gonna have that application, you think? I mean, if we
What-
give you the okay today, I mean, what does that look like as far as moving forward?
Should be, we already had some of the information. It's a matter of just getting the information in. So I would think 30, 60 days, we would have it in. Maybe 90.
A little sooner than that.
Okay, there you go.
So
Sooner.
what's the $6,500 for again?
To have the consultants, S&ME, to actually do the applications for us. They are our current consultants, so they know what to look for. They do this throughout the state, so that way we'll get it right the first time. And then we have to go back, find information of that such as well.
So are you budgeted for that $6,500 already?
I am not,
So you're asking us
Is
to,
that-
but I'm not budgeted specifically for that, but I can handle that in my budget. Solid waste, we won't ask for any additional funds.
so I know we kind of have a game plan for that area. Someone did,
Yep,
UGA
yep,
did a
yep,
study
yep.
for Archway, whoever. We have to pay for this in order to get reimbursed. Do we have a fund that we can pay for this out of if that, I'm just saying, because
Your budget.
we could cut $2 million?
No, yeah, we're gonna get 2 million.
Up to.
I just need $6,500, but I have that inside of my current, solid waste division budget.
Right, but I'm talking like down the road. So we got a plan,
Sure, come on.
we have a plan. I don't know if anybody gave us an estimated cost for that plan. Did they?
State your name and
I'm Mary Stacy. I'm with S&ME, the environmental consultant of record for the Yamacraw landfill
Okay.
since 2010. This is a reimbursement for monies that the county has already spent. So on record, the county has already spent just with S&ME $875,000. $500,000 of that can be paid in lump sum from the reimbursement program, and then the rest would be paid in 50% increments. There are invoices that were incurred by the county since the landfill's closure in 1993. Those invoices are eligible for reimbursement if we
Okay.
can locate them. So in theory, yes, you would be able to pay this $6,500 and have us get all of that information submitted and get a check for $2 million
Right, okay.
to put wherever you want.
Okay, sounds wonderful. That sounds good. Okay, you explained it perfectly.
Okay.
It's like it's an election year under the gold dome or something. It's amazing.
all right. I think we have,
Pretty good.
We have a motion
We
in
do
a
have a
second.
motion
all
and a
right,
second.
all those in favor signify by raising your hand.
It'd be crazy not to.
5-0, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, TJ.
Thank you, TJ.
Y'all keep bringing us good news. I like meetings
Thank you,
like
Mary. We appreciate that, what you do on a day-to-day basis. Item number 7, RS&H has requested time to update the board and the Spalding County Transit Master Plan. Rachel. Name and address, please.
Rachel Hatcher, 29 East 65th Street, Savannah, Georgia. But I'm so happy to see you all and have time to speak to you today about your transit master plan. So I work with RS&H. We're a consulting firm that's been working with you all and your staff for about 12 months now to understand what the needs are for transportation and transit services today and what that might look like in the midterm and long-term future. In addition to that, we look at the data-driven analytics of population, employment, economic development, financial resources, meaning what you have in your community as well as what grant opportunities you have at the state and federal level, and what partnerships you might have in place now that are working well, and those that maybe could grow and change to better meet the needs of the community. So quantifying all of that's important. I'm going to walk you through the steps that we've taken to quantify not only the need, but what your options are and what the recommendations are for this study so that you can be prepared to continue to provide transportation to your community now and in the future, midterm and long term. So if you would go to the next slide, our meeting objectives for today is to give you an overview of all of our activities, including outreach with the community and coordination that we've had with local governments, local businesses, as well as at the state and federal level and regional level. Technical activities. It's a very technical underpinning to make sure that the recommendations that we provide to you all are defensible and that are good business sense decisions that you all as a community can make. And then we do also want to provide you with those recommendations. So you can go to the next one, that's good. So we did hold a public meeting, which in the times of COVID can be a little tricky, but we were really happy with the cross-section of the community that came through and walked through format. We were there for several hours and had a lot of really great engagement and feedback from the community, as well as a push for additional surveys. While we only had 26 folks that came to the meeting, we had a huge surge in surveys as a result of the meeting. So we were really happy that we felt that the word got out through those various community members, and they were able to give us a much better return on our survey response rate. If you'll go to the next slide. You can see that the survey was open for just over 2 months, and we had 412 responses. And you can see the breakdown. We did ask respondents to tell us where in Spalding County they live and work. And so while we did have the largest representation in Zone 2, which I think we all know what community that would be, we did have a good cross-section across the whole community. So we were really happy to see that we had responses from each of the zones in your community, as well as a really good cross-section of age ranges and employment levels. Next slide, please. While we did have 26 questions that we asked folks, 2 that I think are really important that help us to determine what non-service related recommendations the study needs to make. You can see that question 1, do you feel that the area lacks transit options in Spalding County? And the largest majority said yes or I don't know. But then question 2, are you aware that public transit is available currently in Spalding County? And the largest response rate was no. So that's maybe not a disconnect about services not provided, but rather a disconnect on knowledge about services that are already provided to the community. So you might see a recommendation in the study cut to that you perhaps need to enhance marketing or outreach so that folks know what services are already available to them today. Next slide. So your current service that's available today in Spalding County is provided through the Three Rivers Regional Transit System. And you can see those highlighted. You're in partnership with 5 other counties. And one of the great things about being part of a 6-county transit provider is that you can travel and your community can travel outside of your current county into other areas, both with urban and rural trips. And you're going to hear a lot of urban versus rural. But there are 5 vehicles that are dedicated to service in Spalding County. Annual trips of just over 26,000 being provided in Spalding County as of 2021. You see the annual operating cost of $485,000, but that is not the cost that Spalding County currently contributes. Because of federal grant funding and state grant funding, you contribute $13,300 for those services. So really great return on your investment for the services that are already being provided. Next slide. So one of the main reasons that we initiated this study with you all and why it was important and what was conveyed to us as something that's very important to you all is that you are trending urban. Your urbanized area is growing. It's a spinoff of the Atlanta region that's really expanding into your community. And this graphic is a product of Dr. Lori Garrow. In the Atlanta region, she looked at how that was going to anticipate to grow after the 2020 census, and what areas within the current service area for transit that are dedicated as rural are going to trend urban. That urbanized area is growing, and the funding sources that are tied to transit trips provided in those areas flips. It changes. So your rural area is shrinking and the funds associated with it are shrinking. As your urbanized area grows, your urban funds grow. So we have to be sure that we're providing the right type of transportation to follow federal regulations, but also to provide the best type of services for growing urban populations. Next slide. So you can see that there are 2 primary funding sources for urban versus rural trips, 5307, y'all will start to learn that number very intimately in the next 5 years, is your urban transit formula funds. And formula means it is per your census counts. It comes from the federal government and it is dedicated to an urbanized area because of your population per square mile. 5311 is the same, but for your rural areas. So that is a formula fund as well. And as your population shifts, one pot grows, one pot shrinks. So your urbanized area is growing. You can see in the map here, your current urban area is the darker blue in the center, and that lighter blue bubble on the outside is what Dr. Lori Garrow and her team from Georgia Tech anticipate your urbanized area to look like this summer when those new urban boundaries are released. Next slide.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is a fun little exercise about the differences in funding and why this is so important to you all as a growing urban area. So you see the top part is your 5307 urban trips, and your FTA 5311 trips are in green. So if you'll hit the next slide, we're going to take you on a virtual trip. Jane is going to travel from item B to item E, and you can see that is in red, and it is all inside that blue bubble, and that is an urban to urban trip. That means your 5307 urban funds must pay for that trip. So it is a program where you do get to collect fares, but if you're using federal funds to pay for the trips, you have to pull from the right pot. So it typically pays about 50% of your operational funds and up to 80% of capital. So services provided in the blue bubble need to come from red. So when we're programming Jane's trip, we have to make sure we programmed her trip as urban and urban. Next.
Can I
All
ask
right.
a question? while
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
talking?
Of course.
So, in the past, we weren't authorized to, with 53, everything was 5311.
Correct.
Okay, so now 537 has to have a dedicated line, or it can do the same thing as 5311?
You are light years ahead of my presentation. So
Oh, sorry.
essentially, no, this is a really astute question. So you're currently, through Three Rivers, providing urban to urban trips because you already have an urbanized area. So we're already outside of the federal legislation for the type of funding that's available. It's just no one's asked for the 5307 funds yet, and because your urbanized area is growing, it's time. They have, as a state, the Federal Transit Administration and the Georgia Department of Transportation Intermodal have teamed together to find these growing urban areas and to say, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to take these trips that are already provided in your existing urban area, and you're going to apply for these 5307 funds, and you're going to use those funds instead of providing those trips using only 5311. So yes, you are using 5311 funds for all of it today, but we
But we're
shouldn't
not
be.
supposed to.
We shouldn't be. So we're going to bring that's a key recommendation. We're going to bring you into compliance with federal regulations. So this is a great one, Bob. He's traveling all in urban, but he's leaving the county, but he's still in urban because your urbanized area connects to other urbanized area in the Atlanta region. So as long as it's an urban to urban trip, it doesn't matter what county you're in, you still pull from 5307 funds. Next trip is going to be one of your 5311s. If you'll hit next for me. Sue is traveling from A to B, but because one leg of the trip was in rural, it comes from the rural funds. So as long as one segment of the trip is rural, it's rural. If it's rural to rural, it's rural. If it's rural to urban, it's rural. And if it's urban to rural, it's rural. As long as there's one leg in the green, we're rural funds. But if anybody moves from urban to urban, 5307. So we can jump through the next several examples, but y'all will have a copy of these slides so that you can read back up on it when it's time to look at your grant funding. Next slide. It gets complicated, but essentially, as long as you're one leg in the rural, you're 5311 rural funds. Next slide for me. So what's changing? What's happening that we need to do a transit master plan? It's pretty simple to see that our funding sources are changing, and we have to come into compliance for that. But your population is also changing. So again, you've got that increased density in your urbanized areas, and your urban areas are expanding and growing into different areas in your county. And you're decreasing rural area, although the area is decreasing, the needs in those areas aren't changing. So the funding is getting smaller, and their needs have not changed. So how do we more efficiently and most efficiently still provide those important trips? And I do want to point out that the majority of your DHS and rural trips are from medical services. So we want to make sure that those in these rural areas that are getting decreased funding are not negatively impacted by decisions made now or in the future. Next slide. So we did do what's called a transit propensity analysis, and what you see in these categories on the left are the categories per the U.S. Census Bureau and the Transit Service Research Group that says what statistically are categories of our population that are most likely to need and utilize transit? So we did an assessment based on your U.S. Census data to say where are those folks that are most likely to need it and most likely to use it in the appropriate densities. And that's a really key factor in transit because the type of transit you provide is really tied to the number of people living or working in a specific area. If you don't have enough people that are concentrated in an area, it's not cost beneficial to provide a specific type of service. And you'll see that repeated through this presentation, but what you're looking for in this map are those orange and red areas. Those are areas where you're most likely to get high enough transit ridership to move outside of just demand response. So think things like point deviation services, maybe van pool type services for employment, and even perhaps potentially fixed route in that very small red dot you see there, which is City of Griffin. Next slide. This one was a really exciting exercise for us. This is looking at the loads data, which is your Census Bureau data for employment. And we say, where are folks that live in Spalding County working, and where are folks that work in Spalding County living? And what we saw is that folks are traveling as far north as Forsyth County and beyond that are living in Spalding County. So the commute shed is huge. Wow. They're traveling great distances for employment. And you can see that while you do have a central location for employment that's pulling people in for the region, you're also exporting just about equal parts that are headed north. So that's a really important transportation need that is outside of your county and does require some partnerships to provide a service that could benefit your community members and citizens that are trying to head north for employment. Next slide. So we took all this information and data. In order to make something meaningful out of it, we categorized it as service strategies that include geography, i.e. where are we providing service? Is that countywide? Is that only in that little area that looks like it could use fixed route? Is that regionally? Plus the provider. Who's actually providing this service? Is it through partnerships, through a 6-county provider, or is it just Spalding County, we're going to go out on our own? And then the mode. What type of service matches the demand that we're seeing and the population densities that we're seeing? And then that equals your transit service strategy, a combination of all three of those. You can't really form a strategy without one of those pieces. Next slide. So a little bit deeper dive in the types of geographies we looked at. We say Spalding County only, but that can look like a lot of different things. You could say, we're only going to do the urban area and we're not going to stay in the business of providing rural. We wouldn't recommend that, but it is an option. You can pick and choose from your grant sources what type of service you want to provide. You could say rural area only. We just are not ready to make additional investment for the urban funds that are required, so you can come into compliance and ask for the new funds, or you can say, no thank you, we don't want to participate in that program. But then you do have the option to provide both, participating in 5311 and 5307. An example of your regional service is currently provided through partnership. You could maintain that 6-county regional service partnership and continue to pay into that program. Or you could look to connections to new counties like we saw following that loads data employment trip shed. Next slide. And when we talk about providers, those partnerships with those already providing services like Three Rivers, you already have that relationship in place and those contracts in place. You continue to provide service through that contract. Or you could say Spalding County would like to make this a department. We'll run the system. Or Spalding County will be the recipient. We're going to hire our own third-party operator that would actually be a contractor that provides the service. And there are a number of other iterations of that through public-private partnerships where you could provide services using a number of different providers. And then if you're looking at regional service partnerships with the ATL and the CERTA. Next slide. So when we talk about modes, I think this is a really important slide to understand that we looked at all different types of service, which we couch as modes or call modes, where we say, okay, what about heavy or light rail? But you see the dollar signs that go with that. It's a substantial investment. It requires that you make fixed investments that aren't movable, and you need a density of about 30 to 60 residents and 56 jobs per gross acre, which Spalding County just doesn't have. So then you go incrementally down and you see where you start to see the densities make sense and the dollars match up with return on investment is local bus, on-demand bus, which is what you currently provide, and on-demand van pool, which is employment-based. So there's no recommended densities for the latter of the two, and that's a good thing for Spalding County because you're growing, you're changing. There are areas that, while they are urban, they still have a very rural or suburban feel to how dense it is, as well as a lack of sidewalks. So if you're talking about local bus, you need the infrastructure to be able to provide that type of service where folks can get from their home to the closest stop safely. So demand response and van pool type services can go portal to portal, which is really important for a developing and changing community. Next slide. So we did look at each of the geography, provider, and mode pairs and came up with 5 strategies, and we won't go through these in great detail, but you can see we talk about countywide, rural only, urban only, who the provider's going to be, what mode it's going to be, and we couch that with the smiley faces and the neutral faces and the frowny faces because those really help to sum it up. What's the user experience and the customer impact? Because at the end of the day, we're providing public transportation for the user. So strategy 1 has the green smiley face, but also a neutral face because they're already getting these services. Those that are happy with it are going to continue to be happy with services if we maintain that service model. But we do have a neutral face included in that because if they're not happy with the current services and they feel like it's not meeting their needs, then they're not going to be very satisfied with the status quo. Strategy 2, we have stopped providing service in the urbanized area. The trips they're currently getting for medical and services goes away, so clearly our customers won't be very happy with that. Strategy 3 is only neutral because we're looking at a Spalding urban only and a Three Rivers rural only. So we've split now. We have Three Rivers as a contractor doing only rural trips. We have Spalding County as a department or a third-party operator. And the reason we're neutral about that is because now from the urbanized area, we have to stay in Spalding. We can't go regional urban to urban anymore because you'd have to have memorandums of understanding for every county that you want to go into that urban area, and it would not be cost beneficial to Spalding County to provide regional service. So we're neutral on that one. We're happier because we can invest all that money in one little area and be able to provide really great urban service, but we can't go anywhere else outside of that urbanized area. 4, we're really happy. Now we have an influx of additional funding and new options. And the new options is why we're really happy with that one because what's currently happening we're happy with, but it's not really meeting that demand that we see in our population and employment assessment. With Strategy 4, we now have new van pools, ride shares, we have new employment options. That makes us really happy, but it is more expensive. Strategy 5, nobody's happy because we have now restricted all trip types, rural and urban, to Spalding only unless we start expanding beyond your municipal boundaries by memorandum of understanding, and it's less cost beneficial to do that. So we are more expensive. We've segregated ourselves to 1 county versus 6, and there's really no good return on investment for that service strategy. Next slide. So we also did identify the importance of an express bus add-on, and we didn't include that as a separate strategy because we recognized as your consultant team and dealing with your technical staff that this needs to be a recommendation for any of the strategies you choose. The travel shed headed north is so strong and growing that employment-based transportation really needs to be in the forefront for future goals, midterm and long-term. So this would be considered a recommendation for all 5 of the strategies, no matter what's selected. Next slide. So now we move into our analysis of the strategies that were most competitive, and that includes looking at projected ridership, financial analysis, as well as identification of short, mid, and long-term implementation and investment strategies. Next slide. So we did look at what you would call, we call an unlinked passenger trip. That's just a ride. So if somebody gets on the bus and they get off, that's an unlinked passenger trip, but it doesn't account for their whole transportation trip because they do have to make a return. So every time they get on and get off, that's one trip. So we looked at your existing Spalding County transit ridership through Three Rivers. Where are people coming from? Where are they going to? Were they urban? Were they rural? Were they human service trips? So we really dissected that data. We looked at your projected population growth to say, where do we think those concentrations are going to grow? Are they in the urban area, in the rural area, and what does that projection look like? And then unmet demand through your transit propensity. Where are we already providing trips where it doesn't match up with your population that should be riding? So we really could narrow down and say, this area has the greatest propensity for ridership and the lowest ridership. What's happening? What do we need to do differently in those areas? So we did develop a 5-year projection for ridership where you can see that number is going up from the bottom number and the top number so that we could get a conservative estimate of what your ridership should look like over the next 5 years, given current transit ridership, as well as if you changed your system model, what might that look like? Next slide. So same table, just to keep it easy. You can look at each strategy, but you can see that important number is the total there, just above the smiley and frowny faces. So your current system is projected to go from around 21,000 trips to up to 39,000 trips, and that projection comes directly from Three Rivers based on changes they're seeing in the system today. So that's a really great number to see that we think we're going to have a major uptick in ridership over the next 5 years. And you can see incrementally, strategy 2, nobody's happy, transit ridership overall went down, we stopped service in the urban area, we really don't want to pursue that option. But when we go over to strategy 4, you can see you're up to your highest ridership option with 41,000, and the majority of those trips did occur in your urbanized area. And that's because you would have an influx of new options that are appropriate for where we see great propensity or demand, but very little transit options for services. Next slide. And next for me one more. So we take those two most cost beneficial and highest performing scenarios, and we do a further evaluation of those, looking at maintaining your service options and regional trips. We're protecting customer satisfaction and accessibility. We're utilizing your existing capital infrastructure, which is really important. If we move to a fixed route type service, you have to invest a significant amount in capital infrastructure, and it takes time. So making sure that we can maximize your use of existing capital infrastructure and whatever our recommendations are, so that you can plan for the future while still maintaining good service. And most importantly, both of these scenarios bring Spalding County into compliance with federal, rural, and urban regulations. Next slide. And next again for me. So the financial analysis is a really important piece, and it builds on everything you've seen in this presentation so far, because every time someone gets onto a bus, they pay a certain fare. There are federal regulations about how much you can charge based on the trip type. And so you have higher ridership, you have higher fares, but as your fares go up, your federal match goes down. So there's a lot of give and take about how the funding for something like this and how the projections work. What we looked at to get your financial analysis in order is your historic financial and operational data. What have you been bringing in? What's going to change? What might that look like given each of these scenarios? We looked at the financial projections for fiscal year 2022 and what the actuals are to date for that. And we looked at peer system historical financial and operational data, where we said, but they're not doing this yet. So if they do move to a different model, communities that are similar in population, similar in size, similar in connectivity to major urbans, what does their financial position look like, and what are they pulling in for other resources? And an important aside, the table shows that Three Rivers Regional Commission has been providing good service, and the cost for that service is going up as a result. So we know that they're going to be getting less rural funds. You all have access to more urban funds. We know that that ridership is growing. As ridership grows, demand grows for financial resources. Next slide. So strategy 1, where we maintain the current service model, but we just get the appropriate funding sources to go with it. We have our green smiley face, our neutral face for those that really just aren't using the system. It doesn't meet their needs. But it is important to note that the cost to provide the services that are being provided today is going to go up. So you're currently providing offering $13,000 to Three Rivers to provide the service. But now that it's splitting and you have urban funds that must be applied for and rural funds and DHS funds, the anticipated match that was quoted by Three Rivers Regional Commission is $71,561 for the next fiscal year. That is to provide the services that are currently being provided today. And the major distinction there is moving from rural funding to urban funding. So if nothing changes and you provide the services you're providing today, you go from $13,000 to $75,000 in local match.
But aren't we being dinged because we're doing more 5311 trips inside the 5307
Correct.
area. So that means that the other people in Three Rivers are paying for, if we're only paying $13,000, they're paying for us using up all the money.
Yes. Yeah, so essentially you've been underfunding the trips that are being provided because the largest majority, approximately 75% of trips, are happening in Spalding County and Griffin. So this is, again, a projection directly from Three Rivers that does say ridership is growing. DHS and 5311 is really helping to support these trips, but 5307 is going to be a major contributor to those needed funds.
Okay.
I'm the opposite of all the other presenters tonight. I'm really sorry
I'm
about
not
that. Next slide. Next, please. So we see strategy 4, that continues to have Three Rivers provide your rural trips, as well as your Human Services DHS trips. But Spalding County hires a third-party operator to provide urban demand response type services with the additional service options. And you can see that the price tag and bottom line for these services is more substantial at just under $300,000. So we would not consider this something that would need to happen in the short term because that would be quite the jump from $13,000 to just under $300,000. And that projection does not include capital investment. So you would have to procure vehicles, you would have to have some maintenance infrastructure in place. Your third-party operator typically does support some of those activities. But it can range, and I know that a range of $0 to $110,000 is quite the jump, but it depends on the grant sources that you use. So your standard 5307 urban funds typically run about 80% federal, 20% local. Your Build Back Better grant does have opportunity for 0% local match. So there are some opportunities in the future to look at 100% capital funding, but operational is always going to be more substantial because you're paying the drivers, you're paying dispatchers, you're paying maintenance staff, uniforms, fuel, tubes, lube, tires. There's a lot that goes into operating a system, including the third-party operator. So this would be a much more substantial investment in the future.
So the 5307 urbanized area and the cost at $277,000, this is based on what percentage of ridership that you have in the urbanized area? I mean,
So that would be approximately 8,000 trips per year. And this number does have a subset for DHS urban, which is your human services trips. So that's not even included in those. That would be a separate subset of those trips being provided by Three Rivers that says these are the human service trips. So it's not unusual for a community your size to remain demand response and stay as a regional service provider because there's savings in magnitude of scale. You know, you have one transit director for 6 counties. You share that cost. Where there's not a trip in Spalding, perhaps that driver can go into an adjacent county, so you're not paying the full cost of that salary. So when you go separate, it does take a substantial increase in operational funds and capital funds to stand a system like that up. There are communities like Rome, Georgia, Valdosta, Georgia, Liberty County, Hinesville, Georgia, that are a larger urbanized area, but not by a substantial margin, that spend upwards of $1.5 million in operating annually, and they pay 50% of that.
So, but those cities have a citywide transit.
Citywide, yes,
And
not
even though they're
countywide,
fixed,
citywide.
If Rome has that amount of urban traffic, which they are a lot bigger community than us.
They are, yes, ma'am.
And all we're providing is 2 fixed routes. It's gonna be a lot different.
Yes, ma'am.
But, so my question is, our capital investment would be $277,000.
That's your annual operating.
How and when would we be able to access the 5307?
Because
that would be on top of what we're.
That $277,000 is annual operating, and that is your share. So the cost of the service would be $577,000. Then you have your 5307, which pays half after revenues. So you say we have $577,000 to operate the system. That would be 3 vehicles operating at any given time, plus a 4th that's your spare. Then you would have your general passenger revenues at just under $24,000.
Right.
And then the federal government will pay for 50% of the remainder. So that would be the $277,143. annual operating that would have to come from the local government funds.
Okay.
The capital is, I hate to say a one-time investment because every 5 to 7 years you'll have to
Gotta buy
replace
a
your
new
fleet.
vehicle. Yeah.
But that depends on the grant source. There's the build grant, there's New Starts, there's Build Back
Right.
Better opportunities for 100% federal, but for every
Not here yet.
vehicle, you have to have fuel and drivers, and that's really the higher cost. So two black dollar signs, although there maybe should be 4 up there. Next slide. And again for me. So our short-term recommendations clearly would be to implement scenario 1, which is your current service that's being provided through Three Rivers. And to apply for your 5307 urban transit formula funding and establish the protocols for Three Rivers for financial reimbursement of services. There is a nuance there that you could pass that opportunity to own that grant to Three Rivers, but we are recommending that you be the grant steward so that when and if you decide to make changes about how services provided, you're the owner of those 5307 urban funds that are yours by formula. The only important structure there is what you already have, grants administration, financial administration that can do reimbursements. You already operate those types of services as a local government, so that would be essentially just a new grant that you would manage. And then coordinate strategies with Three Rivers for supplemental services. You do have demand that is unmet today. And so identifying how we can build other options in is going to be really important for the traveling public. We also recommend in your short term that you begin coordination with the ATL, and that doesn't have to be through membership, that can be through partnership, to talk to them about commuter service implementation, what that might look like, what those costs might be, what grant opportunities are available to you all. Capital infrastructure could be a park and ride lot, which does have capital costs, but again, there are those 100% federal options for services like that. But there would be annual operating expenses that would have to be negotiated with ATL for services like that. So our short-term recommendation is to just begin that communication to determine what that partnership might look like and what those costs might be to you all as a local government. And to determine whether or not in the midterm that's something that would be cost beneficial to the community. Next slide.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So if under this recommendation, we keep what we're doing rural, and for the urban transit, I know that's a different set of money,
Yes, ma'am.
but it doesn't meet one of the goals well, I'm thinking I'm not speaking just for myself. We're trying to figure out how to get people to work.
Yes,
Or
ma'am.
how to get people from
Yes,
one
ma'am.
side of town to the other. Your recommendation does not really address that, and so I know that LaGrange came out of Three Rivers and has their own system.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just kind of wondering, what was their initial capital, the people who have done it in Three Rivers, what did they get and what did it cost them?
So the reason our short-term recommendation is to stay with Three Rivers is because the cost jump, while it is large, would be substantially smaller than going out on your own.
Right.
And the importance of the short-term recommendation being staying with them is that in the next 12 months, in the next 6 months, your urbanized area is going to be more defined. It'll come out this summer, and then that switch is going to occur. And the federal government and the state government is going to say, how do you intend to provide services? So using the existing infrastructure, while I hate to call it a Band-Aid, it's an important thing to keep the wheels rolling in the next 12 months while you continue to evaluate what your next steps are and what resources Spalding County can put towards public transportation moving forward. Because a jump of $60,000 is not inconsequential to a local government budget, that's something that I think will take 12 to 18 months to determine how that is going to function, while also evaluating what that long-term strategy of additional transit options for your employment-based trips might look like. And that's the important bullet in strategy 1, is to negotiate that with Three Rivers. They are operating through their own third-party operator. So the discussion with Spalding County, hey, we're getting our urban funds now, these get passed through, we want to talk to you about a van pool option. It essentially would just be an add-on to their existing TPO contract, third-party operator contract. So negotiating with them, we see that you said that would cost us $70,000. what can we do about this unmet demand? And that will be part of the report. We'll show you your unmet demand in this report. So when you begin that negotiation with Three Rivers, you have the tools you need to say, well, this is great. We don't want to cut any trips that are currently being provided, but here's our unmet demand. What are we collectively doing about that, given the resources that we have? So this will give you the tools to negotiate that with your existing contract, but you being the 5307 applicant gives you the flexibility to move to a separate service if you determine that that partnership is not effectively providing those employment-based trips that are so important. So this study will give you the areas as well as the quantities of unmet demand so that you can make those decisions in the next 2 years.
So we're talking about 2 years.
Okay.
Okay. And then your midterm strategies, we do recommend that this be reevaluated, maybe as one of your retreat discussion topics. Are we happy with the services that are being provided? Are we happy with the progress? And is it meeting our economic development goals? So we know that there's the goal to have a new airport. Do we want to have a specific type of service that provides trips to and from that airport? So your economic development-based transportation is going to shift. So reevaluating this on an annual basis at the least is going to be very important, particularly with your changing rural to urban status, you're changing grant funding, you're changing goals of providing services for employment. This is going to need to be a continuing conversation to say, okay, where are we with our 5-year goals? And are we meeting them, exceeding them? What changes do we need to make?
So what is the difference about having a fixed route?
It's essentially just looking at your population, housing and employment densities. So a minimum of 4 households per acre and 3 jobs per acre. So if you don't have those minimum density thresholds, then the cost benefit just can't function. You won't have enough people riding the vehicle to pay the drivers for the appropriate proportion. So there's a very small section in the city of Griffin that could support, and that's only hourly. If you tried to get 30 minutes, 45-minute
Right.
headways, you couldn't support it. So as your population grows, that area is going to grow, but currently demand response is the most cost beneficial for you all.
Okay.
And then we do recommend that you continue to apply for your 5307 urban funds as a grant recipient to Spalding County. That's very important to make sure that you maintain that flexibility. And then the last is to implement the ATL commuter service if it's cost beneficial. So having those discussions is a very important first step, but determining whether or not that is something that Spalding County can take on because there is associated costs and it is a regional service. Next slide. That's all I have for you. I know that was a lot. I'm happy to come back again if y'all want to digest and ask more questions.
Yeah, we'll call you.
You saw how we did everything else with the money? You didn't get that picture.
I didn't get the memo. I didn't get
that memo
But
at all.
what I heard was a lot of resources coming to the community that maybe could be invested in just a little bit of transportation. But I hope that I at least was able to answer some questions you might have. We'll give you the tools to negotiate to get the best return on your investment, but I do want to leave you with the transportation scene is changing in your community. We've heard the term, we're growing, urban is coming. It's here, and transportation is just leading you in the dollars. So if you have any questions that come up after I leave, I'll be happy to leave a card. We're happy to answer any questions. Mr. Steve Cody's in the office. He's out of, in the audience. He's out of our Atlanta office, and we're happy to provide any information we can.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Steve.
much.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Report of the county manager.
All right. The comp plan, we will provide our schedule, and we're asking for our community to participate. That's the headline. We have our kickoff meeting in Orchard Hill scheduled for Monday, March the 14th, and our kickoff meeting in Sunnyside scheduled for Tuesday, the 15th. Our steering team members are being identified, and our consultants are leading us toward completing the program by October 31st in support of our Georgia Department of Community Affairs deadline. The Aquatic Center, there's an update. We have issued the land disturbance permit, and Paragon has completed the RFP, and our plans are to have the RFP ready for upload to the Georgia Procurement Registry for competitive bidding very shortly. Our service delivery strategy is progressing well. RFPs for the sidewalk and resurfacing work, thanks to the adopted T-Splost, is well underway. Our plans are to open bids for the work the first week of April, and kudos to TJ for helping us work through that process along with Brian Upson with Paragon.
Super. That's super news. Thank you.
Kudos to DeAndre and Amy for our Spalding County 2021 annual report. It's at the printers, and we're ready to upload our spaldingcounty.com website with that document very shortly. It should go out before the end of the week. Also, kudos to DeAndre and Amy for the launch of In Spalding TV. This is on our YouTube channel. If you've not subscribed to this channel, please do so. Kudos to Sheriff Darrell Dix for the Spalding County Sheriff's Department app. If you've not signed up for that app, it's a great communication tool, and the sheriff has just done a fabulous job with that. Thank you, Sheriff. Our county marshal will join our full-time employment team in the morning. Thanks to Sheriff Dix for helping us find a way to bring our code enforcement into existence. Our community development director will also start tomorrow morning, and we're excited to bring him on board. Appreciation launch and training for our boards, commissions, and authorities was held today, and I thought it was a tremendous success. There's a lot going on in Spalding County, and I'm glad to be a part of the team. Thank you very much. That ends my report.
Cool. Okay. Commissioner Johnson?
All right. Gosh, very impressed with the annual financial comprehensive plan. Great news. I don't know whether to thank Dr. Ledbetter or not. How much contribution you have in that, I don't know, but, no? Okay.
I will
well,
never take credit.
Yes, yes.
I'm sure you had something to do with it, but thank you very much. And it's glad to see that we're in that area moving in the right direction. Hopefully, we continue moving in the right direction in that. Also want to thank Stephanie for a wonderful workshop today, you know, with our board and appointment boards. I thought that was fun, informative. I think we all learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to next year to publicize it a little bit more, and that the boards that were actually there, the people serving on these boards, will actually communicate that with others, because I think they really got a lot out of it. So it was a great job there. Last but not least, you know, a great presentation on this, you know, transportation plan. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you know, it tells me that we are moving in the right direction. And comes growth, comes more money, comes transportation. I mean, it all goes together. So we've got so many other things working so well for us. This is part of it, and we'll just have to figure out how to take care of that as we move in the new direction.
Yep.
That's
We're
it.
growing. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Bolden?
I didn't get a chance to talk to Steve today, about the $1,000 from the governor. I don't know if anything's happened since, but at a Friday, I've reached out to a couple of our state representatives and, Marty Harbin and them, just to try to see where it's at, cause I've been asked a lot here lately about it, cause everybody around us has seemed to have gotten it. And so they know that the commissioners ain't hiding it, and we're not trying to fund their raises and all that kind of stuff. So we're working on it, Sheriff.
Okay. Anything else, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Flowers Taylor?
Yes. I thought that the workshop that we had today was also very informative, and I'd certainly like to see that we work towards creating some policy that will assure our board appointees that we're not gonna just throw them in to be in a meeting without having some idea of what's really going on. Just wanted to remind everyone that 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, when we decided that we wanted to do a comprehensive transportation plan, we all talked about having urban transit. Back then, they didn't have urban transit. They weren't allowing urban transit. But let's not forget that part of the reason we didn't put it on the T-Splosh was because it was going to be 2 years before we got the results. So I know that we didn't appropriate those fundings, but I hope that when we go back and look at this, we see that the funding source that we need to use for that would certainly be a transportation T-Splosh. I hope that there is funding that will come along that will allow us to be able to do this, because I think it's important for us to first of all, make sure that people can get from one side of town to the other. This is a very large walking population, a senior population of people, and that it helps us to grow, because obviously the more houses that come here, the more urban we're gonna become, and the problem's not gonna be how do you get out of the rural area into town. It's gonna be how do you get around in the town, period. Also, I wanted to ask, you made the remarks about the aquatic center, I think you said moving dirt or something like that. I just want to ask that when the RFP or whatever the engineering orders are done, that we make sure that, that we stay true to what the Development Authority has tried to do, that we make that building as green as possible, that we try to utilize any solar panels or anything that we can to help offset the cost of that. I think it's important that if we're gonna go into that park, and it's supposedly a green park, that we make every effort in the construction of that so that we can work toward the future and the longevity of that facility. That's all I got.
Okay. Commissioner Dutton?
I'm also pretty excited about the Transit Master Plan. It's interesting to see this and then to compare it with the overlay that Downtown Council and that Main Street are doing with the city of Griffin as far as the bike and interconnectivity of like the bike lanes and walking areas. That's gonna be really cool. I love how it's routed through City Park. If you haven't seen those plans, I'm very excited about that, and I can't wait to see all of this. I can't wait 10 years from now to look back and be like, look at all we've got now. Additionally, I want to really call out our amazing fire department. They invited me to an actual house burn. Someone donated a house, and we got to suit up and put the whole thing on and go inside and put a fire out, and then they'd relight it and we'd put it out, and when you're in the training box, it's really like a steel Connex container, and you're in there, and there's the fire, it's there, and you can kind of see how the smoke fills up the room, but it's very controlled. When you go to an actual house fire that's made out of wood, the floor is wood, the walls are wood, the ceiling is wood, and it's all on fire at 1100 degrees, you're like, wow, this is a lot different than just, this. It's controlled. I felt very safe. There was 100 guys around me that made sure, because they were doing their training at the same time, and to see them actually go in and like really fight these fires, and how quickly it can go from, oh yeah, it's right there, to holy moly, it's all around me, all over the ceiling, all over the walls, but then to be able to put the training that they gave me to use and like open that fire hose up and watch it die back down. There's an invitation to all of you to go and try it. It's awesome, awesome, awesome.
No, thank you.
Amazing. You should totally do it.
Not
you
for
should
me.
Totally do it. I felt safe the whole time. She pokes on this side and she birds on this side. I was safe the whole time. But it was, it truly gave me a new appreciation for how literally. And we use the word, literally heroic it is for these men to arrive on a scene and within 10 seconds be inside a house that's on fire. That's literally heroic. Again, the training that we did, the appreciation today, I know that we have employee of the month type stuff. Is there a way to have board member of the month type? Without getting into gratuities and this kind of stuff, but there's got to be some way to recognize some of these folks that have stepped up, not just to be on a board, but to chair a board or to yeah.
Put them in the paper.
Because there's literally hundreds of people that come out and volunteer and help. I just love that we had the activity today. I just think there's still more that we could bubble up to the top on that. I've gotten some more information on the Public Defenders Council that I brought up last time. The The state appoints one of the three members, the judges appoint one of the three members, and then all of the county commissions appoint one of the three members together. And so we all have to approve one person. The other commissions have, I don't know if they've already voted or they've just come to a consensus on who they want it to be. And it should be no secret that it's our former Chief Superior Court Judge, who worked the whole circuit, and so he knows the whole circuit. But in order to replace our new, the retiring circuit public defender, I think we have to appoint that person. And I think the end of this month is when his resignation is good. I think March 1st, we're going to sort of be rudderless there. Now, all the offices will continue operating, independently, but without, and it's sort of like a DA race. In the meantime, we still need somebody who's there. So if Stephanie, could you follow up on that? I don't know if they already have voted, if we need to vote, but that should certainly be
You talking
something
about
that's a
us,
priority.
Lynn? Or who you talking
Yeah,
about?
well, all four of the county commissions have to vote to approve this person.
Okay.
That's the third member of that board. That board then makes the recommendation to the state to appoint but they're gonna go with whatever that recommendation is. But without all three members, they can't make a recommendation to the state, and the state's gonna go, well, we're just gonna wait until you've got a recommendation. So, it's, justice, what do they say, justice delayed is justice denied, so we need to get on top of this. And again, I think the former Chief Superior Court Judge would be great. Personally, I think he should have retired and become a law professor. He knows so much about the law, it's staggering. But moving on, there was one last thing. There was a couple ideas that have been bandied about as far as the Development Authority goes, and I can't wait till we can publicly unveil them. But some of the stuff that is gonna come out of there, I'm really excited about. Some of the stuff to help local entrepreneurs, but also to bring in, bigger outside firms. Very excited, very excited. I'm glad that, traditionally the focus for a development authority, industrial development authority, has been how do I bring in big factories and how do I bring in these jobs? But ever since I've been on there, it's like, well, what are we gonna do for locals and entrepreneurs and stuff? And so, we've got a good idea, and, I can't wait till we can get that rolling and actually come out and
Yeah, briefly.
Yeah.
it's gonna be really cool. So I'm very excited and thankful for all the hard work that they do. And, that's it for me tonight.
Okay, cool. All right. First, big thank you for the staff being able to do the bulk items that we did. That's the first time we've done it in years, and I'm hoping that we will continue to do that. Great, DeAndre, great video of that being done. Thank you for that. I'd like to echo everybody else's, their appreciation, lunch and learn, and how well that went. Both of you did absolutely great in setting that thing up and making it work. That your entire team did that well. Pancake breakfast was, I thought, great.
Woo-hoo.
Yep, great, and it's great for our county for what they're trying to do. We lead by example, and the kinds of things we want to do. Definition of sometimes hero is, you heard Commissioner Dutton talking about the problems of fire and how bad it is when somebody is driving down the street and sees a house that he doesn't know who the owner is, and it's on fire, and he decides that he's going to run into a burning building to help people. Let me tell you, that definition of hero and lead by example is the kinds of things that are going on. Extremely proud of that.
Anyone else in the same position would have done the same thing.
I don't believe that. Congratulations to William Wilson
Sorry.
on becoming General Griffin. Congratulations to Bonnie on Golden Eagle. There are a number of apps that we have just been listening to. We're going to try to get those all consolidated into one email or something so we can get those out. The sheriff in Griffin, the two apps we've got to be able to do that, and I think DeAndre's going to try to work on that. Thanks to the sheriff for what he's done for us on the Marshall. That's really a big deal, and we appreciate your effort. And then, as we heard tonight, we appreciate your efforts over the last year on the amount of money you spent and everything else. That is a big help for us to being able to do that. And lastly, to the county manager for picking up two absolutely great positions that we needed to have filled.
Yes.
Planning community development position and the marshal. Those are two hard positions to fill. You've worked hard at that, and they will start paying big dividends, I think, immediately, and glad to be able to do that. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Oh, it's not too bad. I don't say the clock. Should have been 7:30, but that's okay. It should have been 7:30, but it's all right.
I haven't yet. They've come up a little. They're just kind of shadows now, but I haven't got those markers on.